First contact. The Zornians arrive. The sleek, silver spacecraft descended from the clouds, its silent approach belying the monumental significance of the moment. Dr. Amelia Chen stood at the edge of the designated landing zone, her heart pounding with a mix of excitement and trepidation. As the lead xenobiologist for the United Earth government, she had spent her entire career preparing for this day. Humanity's first official contact with an alien species. The ship touched down with barely a whisper, and for a moment, everything was still. Then, with a soft hiss, a door materialized in the seamless hull. Dr. Chen straightened her posture, acutely aware that she was about to become the face of humanity for these visitors from the stars. 3 figures emerge, each nearly 7 feet tall with iridescent, scale-like skin that shimmered in the sunlight. Their large, multifaceted eyes swept across the assembled humans, taking in every detail. The lead alien stepped forward, its mouthparts moving in a complex pattern. A moment later, a melodic voice emanated from the translation device at Dr. Chen's belt. "Greetings, people of Earth. We are the Zornians, and we come in peace and curiosity." Dr. Chen smiled and bowed slightly. "Welcome to Earth. I am Dr. Amelia Chen, and on behalf of humanity, we are honored to meet you." The lead Zornian, who introduced himself as Ambassador Zox, tilted his head in what seemed to be their version of a nod. "The honor is ours, Dr. Chen. We have long observed your world from afar, fascinated by your species' rapid advancement and unique cultural diversity." As they began walking towards the Welcome Center, Dr. Chen couldn't help but notice the Zornians' unusual gait, a fluid, almost dance-like movement that seemed at odds with their imposing stature. She made a mental note to study their locomotion more closely later. Inside the Welcome Center, a team of scientists and diplomats waited eagerly. Dr. Chen began the introductions, but she quickly realized that the Zornians were more interested in examining their surroundings than in formal pleasantries. Ambassador Zox approached a potted plant, his multifaceted eyes zeroing in on a small bud. "Fascinating," he murmured. "Your world teems with such vibrant life. On Zornia, we have long since moved beyond natural reproduction. Our population is carefully controlled through advanced cloning techniques." Dr. Chen's scientific curiosity piqued. "You no longer reproduce naturally. How long has this been the case?" Zox turned to her, his iridescent scales shifting color slightly. "For over 1,000 of your Earth years, it has allowed us to focus our energies on technological advancement and space exploration." One of the other Zornians, introduced as Chief Scientist Vex, chimed in. "However, we have noticed some concerning trends in recent centuries. Genetic diversity is declining, and we're seeing an increase in previously rare disorders." Dr. Chen's mind raced with the implications. Could this be why the Zornians had finally decided to make contact? Were they seeking help? As the day progressed, the cultural misunderstandings began to pile up. The Zornians were fascinated by the most mundane human behaviors, the way they ate, their displays of emotion, even their need for sleep. At one point, Ambassador Zox became utterly transfixed by a young couple holding hands in the facility's cafeteria. "Dr. Chen," he called out, his voice filled with genuine curiosity, "what is the purpose of this physical contact? Is it some form of energy transfer?" Dr. Chen couldn't help but smile. "Not exactly, Ambassador. Humans often express affection through touch. Holding hands is a sign of emotional closeness, often romantic in nature." The concept seemed to baffle the Zornians. Vex tilted her head, her scales shimmering with a new pattern. "Romantic? You mean your mating rituals involve emotions?" "Well, yes," Dr. Chen replied, realizing she was about to embark on a much more complex explanation than she had anticipated. "Human reproduction is closely tied to our emotional connections, love, attraction, partnership. These all play a role in how we choose mates and raise offspring." The Zornians exchanged looks that Dr. Chen couldn't quite interpret. Finally, Ambassador Zox spoke, his voice carrying a note of what might have been envy. How inefficient, and yet intriguing. Perhaps this emotional component contributes to your species' remarkable creativity and adaptability. As the day drew to a close, Dr. Chen found herself both exhausted and exhilarated. The Zornians' visit had already challenged many of her preconceptions about alien life, and she sensed that they were equally shaken by their encounters with humanity. In her quarters that night, Dr. Chen reviewed her notes, her mind buzzing with questions. The Zornians' advanced technology was undeniable, but their lack of natural reproduction and emotional connections seemed to have left a void in their society. Could this be an opportunity for humanity to offer something unique to an interstellar civilization? As she drifted off to sleep, Dr. Chen couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger adventure, one that would challenge both humanity and the Zornians to reconsider their place in the universe. The Zornian Dilemma. The following weeks were a whirlwind of diplomatic meetings, scientific exchanges, and cultural misunderstandings. Dr. Amelia Chen found herself at the center of it all, serving as the primary liaison between humanity and the Zornian delegation. It was during a late-night discussion with Chief Scientist Vex that the true nature of the Zornians' visit began to emerge. They were huddled in Dr. Chen's makeshift office, surrounded by holographic displays of Zornian and human genetic data. "You see, Dr. Chen," Vex explained, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the swirling data, "our society has achieved remarkable technological feats, but we're facing a crisis that threatens our very existence." Dr. Chen leaned forward, intrigued. "Go on." Vex's scales shimmered with a pattern that Dr. Chen had come to associate with concern. "Our cloning process, while efficient, has led to a dangerous lack of genetic diversity. We're seeing a rise in genetic disorders, decreased adaptability to environmental changes, and a sort of stagnation in our cognitive development." "That's fascinating," Dr. Chen mused, her mind already racing with possibilities. "Have you considered reintroducing natural reproduction?" Vex's mouthparts twitched in what might have been embarrassment. We've lost the ability. Centuries of reliance on cloning have atrophied our reproductive systems. More importantly, we've lost the instinctual and emotional drives that once fueled our mating behaviors. Dr. Chen sat back, stunned. "So, you came to Earth to learn," Vex finished. "We hope that by studying a species that still reproduces naturally, we might find a solution to our dilemma." The implications were staggering. Dr. Chen spent the next few days in a frenzy of research and brainstorming. Finally, she called a meeting with both the human scientific team and the Zornian delegation. "I believe we can help," she announced to the assembled group. "We could potentially use human genetic material to introduce diversity into the Zornian genome. Combined with tailored hormonal treatments, we might be able to kickstart your species' natural reproductive processes." The room erupted in a cacophony of excited chatter and concerned murmurs. Ambassador Zox raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Dr. Chen, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, this proposal raises serious ethical concerns. We cannot simply mix our species." Dr. Chen nodded, having anticipated this objection. "I understand your concerns, Ambassador, but we wouldn't be creating human Zornian hybrids. We'd be using carefully selected human genetic sequences to supplement your existing genome. Think of it as a genetic booster shot." The debate raged for hours. Some human scientists argued that interfering with Zornian evolution was ethically questionable. Others saw it as a unique opportunity to advance xenobiology by centuries. The Zornians themselves were divided, with some eager to explore this potential solution and others wary of fundamentally altering their species. As the arguments reached a fever pitch, Dr. Chen noticed Ambassador Zox standing quietly in the corner, his scales shifting through a kaleidoscope of colors. She approached him, speaking softly. "Ambassador, what are your thoughts on all this?" Zox turned to her, his multifaceted eyes somehow conveying their deep weariness. "Dr. Chen, I must confess something to you. Our mission here, It wasn't sanctioned by our full government. A faction of us recognized the dire nature of our situation and decided to seek help, against the wishes of our more conservative leaders. Dr. Chen's eyes widened. You risked everything to come here. Zox's scales rippled with a pattern she hadn't seen before, perhaps a mix of determination and fear. We did. And now, hearing your proposal, I believe it may be our only hope, but convincing both our peoples will be a monumental task. Energized by Zox's confession, Dr. Chen returned to the center of the room. Everyone, please, she called out, her voice cutting through the chaos. I know this is a complex and sensitive issue, but consider the potential benefits, not just for the Zornians, but for humanity as well. This collaboration could unlock new frontiers in genetics, medicine, and our understanding of life itself. She took a deep breath, locking eyes with both humans and Zornians. I propose we form a joint research team. We'll proceed cautiously, with full transparency and ethical oversight from both species. This isn't just about saving the Zornians. It's about two intelligent species coming together to solve a problem neither could tackle alone. The room fell silent as her words sank in. Finally, one of the human scientists spoke up. It's risky, but count me in. Slowly, others began to nod in agreement. Even some of the more hesitant Zornians seemed swayed by Dr. Chen's passion. Ambassador Zox stepped forward, his scales now shimmering with a bright, hopeful pattern. On behalf of my people, I accept your proposal, Dr. Chen. Let us embark on this journey together. As the meeting adjourned, Dr. Chen felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. She had just committed herself to a project that could reshape the future of two species. The road ahead would be challenging, filled with scientific hurdles, ethical dilemmas, and likely more than a few cultural clashes. But as she looked around at the determined faces of both humans and Zornians, she knew they were making history. This collaboration could be the beginning of a new era of interstellar cooperation and scientific advancement. That night, as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Dr. Chen allowed herself a small smile. Whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain. The universe had just become a much more interesting place. Breaking barriers. As the joint human-Zornian research project got underway, Dr. Amelia Chen found herself working closely with Chief Scientist Vex. Despite their physiological differences, the two women discovered a shared passion for scientific discovery that transcended species barriers. One particularly late night in the lab, as they pored over genetic sequencing data, Vex suddenly straightened up, her scales shimmering with an excited pattern. Dr. Chen, look at this. The human gene sequence for oxytocin production. It's remarkably similar to an inactive sequence in our own genome. Dr. Chen leaned in, her eyes widening as she saw the correlation. Fascinating. Oxytocin plays a crucial role in human bonding and reproductive behaviors. If we could reactivate this sequence in Zornians, it could be the key to jump-starting our emotional and physical capacity for natural reproduction. Vex finished, her multifaceted eyes gleaming. Their excitement was palpable as they began formulating a plan to test their theory. However, their breakthrough was met with resistance from both sides. Some human ethicists argued that reactivating dormant Zornian genes was tantamount to playing God, while conservative Zornian factions feared that introducing human-like emotions would destabilize their carefully ordered society. Ambassador Zox found himself caught in the middle, trying to balance the potential salvation of his species with the concerns of his people. During a tense video conference with Zornian leaders back home, he stood his ground. Esteemed Council, I understand your reservations, but we must adapt or face extinction. The humans have shown us a path forward. We would be foolish not to explore it. Meanwhile, Dr. Chen faced her own battles with the United Earth government. In a heated meeting with top officials, she passionately defended the project. This isn't just about helping the Zornians, she argued. The knowledge we gain could revolutionize our understanding of genetics, potentially leading to cures for genetic disorders that have plagued humanity for millennia. As the debates raged on, Dr. Chen and Vex continued their work, often joined by Ambassador Zox, who had taken a keen interest in the research. Late one evening, as they were running simulations on potential gene therapies, Zox approached Dr. Chen with an unusually hesitant demeanor. "Dr. Chen," he began, his scales shifting through subtle hues, "I've been observing human interactions closely, particularly the concept of friendship. I believe I'm experiencing similar feelings towards you and Vex. Is this normal?" Dr. Chen smiled warmly, touched by the ambassador's vulnerability. "Absolutely, Zox. Friendship often develops when people work closely together, sharing challenges and triumphs. It's a natural human experience, and perhaps a sign that you're already changing." This moment marked a turning point in their relationship. As the days passed, Zox became more than just a diplomatic liaison. He became a true collaborator and friend. His growing emotional capacity, while subtle, did not go unnoticed by the other Zornians. Some viewed it with alarm, but others were intrigued, quietly approaching Dr. Chen to learn more about human relationships. The breakthrough they had been hoping for came unexpectedly. During a routine gene therapy trial, one of the Zornian volunteers reported an unusual sensation. "I feel warm," she said, her scales rippling with an entirely new pattern, "and I have an inexplicable urge to be near others." Excited, Dr. Chen ran a series of tests. The results were clear. They had successfully reactivated the Zornian equivalent of oxytocin production. It was a small step, but a crucial one. News of the success spread quickly, igniting a new wave of debate and excitement. Dr. Chen found herself working around the clock, juggling research, diplomatic meetings, and an ever-growing list of Zornian volunteers eager to experience these new emotions. One evening, as she was explaining the concept of human familial bonds to a group of fascinated Zornians, she caught sight of Vex and Zox in deep conversation across the room. Vex reached out and hesitantly placed a hand on Zox's arm, a gesture that would have been unthinkable for Zornians just weeks ago. Dr. Chen felt a swell of emotion. They were witnessing the birth of a new era for the Zornian species, one that held the promise of deeper connections, richer experiences, and perhaps a return to the natural rhythms of life that they had long abandoned. But with this progress came new challenges. Some Zornians, overwhelmed by their newfound emotions, struggled to cope. Earth's social media platforms buzzed with debates about the ethics of the project, while Zornian communication channels were flooded with testimonials from those who had undergone the treatment. The once stoic species was experiencing a cultural revolution, and not everyone was prepared for the change. Dr. Chen, Vex, and Zox found themselves working tirelessly to address the myriad of issues that arose. They established support groups for Zornians struggling with their new emotions, developed educational programs to help both species understand each other better, and continued refining their genetic treatments. One particularly challenging day, as Dr. Chen was mediating a heated argument between two Zornian factions, she felt a gentle touch on her shoulder. It was Zox, his scales shimmering with a pattern she now recognized as concern. "Amelia," he said, using her first name, a recent development that still sent a small thrill through her. "You need rest. You've been working for 36 hours straight." She sighed, realizing he was right. "I can't stop now, Zox. There's still so much to do." Vex joined them, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the same worry. "He's right, Amelia. You humans may be remarkably adaptable, but you're not invincible. Rest is crucial for optimal cognitive function. You taught us that, remember?" Dr. Chen couldn't help but chuckle. "Using my own lessons against me. That's not fair." As they guided her away from the lab, she marveled at how far they'd come. Months ago, the idea of a Zornian showing concern for her well-being would have been unthinkable. Now, it felt as natural as breathing. The human touch. As the project entered its second year, the changes in Zornian society became impossible to ignore. The once rigid, emotionally distant species was transforming. Zornians were forming deep friendships, experiencing the joys and pains of romantic love, and even beginning to create family units. Dr. Chen watched this transformation with a mix of scientific fascination and personal joy. She had grown close to many Zornians, particularly Vex and Zox, and seeing them embrace their newfound emotions was deeply rewarding. However, the project still faced a significant hurdle. Despite the reactivation of emotional capacities and some physiological changes, the Zornians remained unable to reproduce naturally. The clock was ticking, and pressure was mounting from both Earth and Zornia to show concrete results. It was during a late-night brainstorming session that Vex proposed a radical idea. What if, she began, her scales shimmering with excitement, we don't just reactivate our dormant genes. What if we temporarily integrate specific human DNA sequences to jumpstart our reproductive systems? The room fell silent. Dr. Chen's mind raced with the implications. You're talking about creating human Zornian hybrids. Zox, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. Not exactly. The offspring would still be predominantly Zornian, but they would carry trace amounts of human DNA, enough to potentially kickstart our species' evolution back towards natural reproduction. The proposal was met with a mix of excitement and apprehension. It was a risky move, one that would blur the lines between their species in ways that couldn't be undone. But as they debated long into the night, one thing became clear. It might be their best chance at ensuring the long-term survival of the Zornian species. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. As news of the proposal spread, volunteers from both species came forward. Humans offered to donate genetic material, while Zornians volunteered to be the first to attempt this new form of reproduction. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly with her team to ensure every precaution was taken. They ran countless simulations, developed new prenatal care protocols, and prepared for every conceivable outcome. The day of the first attempt arrived. The atmosphere in the lab was tense as Dr. Chen, Vex, and a team of human and Zornian scientists prepared to initiate the procedure. Zox, who had become an unofficial member of the research team, paced nervously nearby. As they began, Dr. Chen couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them to this point. What had started as a simple cultural exchange had evolved into something that could reshape the future of both their species. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the beeping of monitors and the quiet murmur of scientists comparing notes. And then, suddenly, a collective gasp filled the room. It worked, Vex whispered, her scales shimmering with a joy so intense it was almost blinding. The embryo. It's viable. The room erupted in cheers. Dr. Chen found herself swept up in a very un-Zornian group hug, laughing and crying all at once. As the excitement settled, she locked eyes with Zox across the room. His expression was one of pure awe. "Thank you," he said simply, his voice thick with emotion. "You've given us a future." In the days that followed, news of their success spread rapidly. The first Zornian pregnancy in over 1,000 years became a symbol of hope and a testament to the power of interspecies cooperation. But with this success came new challenges. Earth's governments debated the implications of having trace human DNA in an alien species. Some religious groups protested, claiming it was an affront to the natural order. Meanwhile, on Zornia, debates raged about how this would change their society and what it meant for their species' future. Through it all, Dr. Chen and her team worked tirelessly. They monitored the pregnancy closely, developed new protocols for Zornian prenatal care, and prepared for the birth that would change everything. As the due date approached, Dr. Chen found herself reflecting on the incredible journey they had undertaken. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission had turned into something that would reshape the future of two species. She thought about the challenges they had overcome, the friendships forged across the stars, and the boundless potential of cooperation and understanding. The night before the scheduled birth, Dr. Chen stood on the roof of the research facility, gazing up at the stars. She felt a presence beside her and turned to see Zox, his scales shimmering softly in the moonlight. "Nervous about tomorrow?" she asked. Zox's multifaceted eyes reflected the starlight as he considered her question. "Nervous, yes, but also filled with hope. Amelia, when we first came to Earth, we were a dying species, lost in our own hubris. You showed us not just the science to save ourselves, but the beauty of emotion, of connection." Dr. Chen felt a lump form in her throat. "You've taught us just as much, Zox, about resilience, adaptability, the power of change." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, two beings from different worlds united by a common purpose and a deep friendship. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Zox said finally, "know that you've already changed our world for the better. You've given us back our future." As they turned to head back inside, Dr. Chen felt a profound sense of anticipation. Tomorrow would bring the dawn of a new era for the Zornians, and with it, a new chapter in the story of interstellar cooperation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, human and Zornian, united in their quest for understanding and growth. The stars twinkled overhead, bearing witness to this moment of quiet triumph. In the vast expanse of the universe, two species had reached across the void and found not just allies, but friends, and in doing so, they had reshaped the very fabric of their existence. A new beginning. The day of the birth arrived, bringing with it a palpable sense of anticipation that seemed to permeate every corner of the research facility. Dr. Amelia Chen paced the hallway outside the birthing chamber, her mind racing with a mix of scientific curiosity and very human nervousness. Inside, a team of human and Zornian medical professionals worked together in a carefully choreographed dance, their movements precise and purposeful. The expectant Zornian parent, Lux, lay on a specially designed birthing platform, her scales shimmering with a complex pattern of excitement and apprehension. Hours passed, marked only by the steady beep of monitors and the occasional murmur of the medical team. Dr. Chen found herself surrounded by an unlikely group, Vex, whose usual scientific stoicism had given way to barely contained excitement. Zox, who alternated between pacing nervously and offering words of encouragement to everyone in sight, and a handful of human and Zornian officials who had insisted on being present for this historic moment. Suddenly, a new sound cut through the tense atmosphere, a high-pitched trill unlike anything Dr. Chen had ever heard before. The doors to the birthing chamber flew open, and a jubilant Zornian nurse emerged. "It's done," she announced, her scales flashing in a brilliant display of joy. "The child is born, and both parent and offspring are healthy." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd. Dr. Chen felt tears of joy welling up in her eyes as she turned to embrace Vex and Zox. In that moment, all the long hours, the setbacks, the debates and doubts, it all faded away in the face of this miraculous new life. As they filed into the chamber, Dr. Chen's scientific mind kicked into high gear. The newborn Zornian was smaller than she had expected, its scales still soft and somewhat translucent. But what struck her most were its eyes. Multifaceted like its Zornian parent, but with an unmistakable spark of curiosity that seemed almost human. Over the next few days, news of the successful birth spread across Earth and to the far reaches of Zornian space. The response was overwhelming. Messages of congratulations and support poured in from around the globe and across the stars. Even those who had been skeptical of the project found it hard to deny the miracle of new life and the promise it held for the future. As Dr. Chen and her team monitored the health and development of both parent and child, they made fascinating discoveries. The newborn Zornian, while predominantly of its native species, showed subtle but significant differences. Its emotional responses were more pronounced, its curiosity more acute. And as it grew, it began to display a capacity for adaptation that amazed even the most optimistic researchers. But perhaps the most profound changes were happening in Zornian society at large. The success of the birth had sparked a renewed interest in natural reproduction among the Zornians. Couples who had undergone the genetic treatments were reporting a deepening of their emotional bonds, and some were even beginning to experience physiological changes that hinted at a reawakening of long-dormant reproductive capabilities. 6 months after the birth, Dr. Chen found herself standing before a joint session of Earth's United Nations and the Zornian High Council, connected via a real-time holographic link. As she looked out at the sea of human and Zornian faces, she felt the weight of the moment. "Distinguished representatives," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves, "what we have accomplished here is more than just a scientific breakthrough. It is a testament to the power of cooperation, to the strength we can find when we reach across the stars to help one another." She went on to detail the project's successes, the ongoing research, and the promising signs of a Zornian reproductive renaissance. But as she spoke, she realized that the true impact of their work went far beyond the realm of biology. In helping the Zornians rediscover a fundamental aspect of their nature, we humans have also been changed, she continued. We've been reminded of the power of empathy, of the beauty that can arise when we open ourselves to new experiences and new connections. This project has shown us that the differences between our species are far less significant than what we share: a desire to grow, to learn, and to forge meaningful bonds with others. As she concluded her speech, Dr. Chen looked out at the assembled representatives. She saw hope in their eyes, human and Zornian alike, and knew that this was just the beginning. In the years that followed, the relationship between Earth and Zornia deepened. Cultural exchanges became common, with humans and Zornians learning from each other in ways that enriched both societies. The scientific collaboration expanded beyond reproduction, leading to breakthroughs in medicine, technology, and space exploration that neither species could have achieved alone. And at the heart of it all was a simple truth, that in reaching out to help another species, humanity had not only ensured the survival of the Zornians, but had also discovered new aspects of its own potential. As Dr. Chen watched the first generation of new Zornians grow, she often reflected on the incredible journey that had brought them to this point. What had started as a curious encounter between two very different species had blossomed into something beautiful and profound, a testament to the enduring power of compassion, curiosity, and the shared desire to understand and be understood. In the end, the story of humanity and the Zornians was more than just a tale of scientific achievement. It was a reminder that even across the vast distances of space, the things that truly matter, love, friendship, the wonder of new life, remain universal. And in that shared experience, two species from different worlds had found not just allies, but family. As she gazed up at the stars one night, surrounded by her human colleagues and Zornian friends, Dr. Amelia Chen smiled. The universe, she realized, was not a cold and empty place, but a tapestry of potential connections waiting to be made. And humanity, with its unique blend of emotion, intellect, and adaptability, was perfectly poised to help weave those connections, one intergalactic friendship at a time.